I didn't have time to get a good haircut this week, so this was my answer. Just move it. I said the president wants all the chairs moved back so they can't see him. So that's what they did for me. So I got a great team. They'll do anything I say. Well, that'll be next month. We'll do that, Jack. We'll do that. We're trying to get some visual, trying to get the screen set up and be able to see, because sometimes we're cranking our heads, and so we're trying to improve the quality of our meetings. So that's where we're heading. As soon as Harmony gets seated, we'll start the meeting. Okay. Travis, you look 20 pounds lighter and 30 years younger, so this is probably a good thing. It's a distance. All right, everyone, let's call this meeting to order. Mike Watts is 6:02. Verification. Oh, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, if everyone can stand. Okay, ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, verification of quorum.
Okay, Director Nathan?
Here.
Director Berringham?
Here.
Director Odell? Here. Director Poland? Here. President Welty?
Here.
5 present, quorum met.
Okay, we're looking for approval of minutes for June 4th. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
5 in favor, motion carried.
Okay, do we have any public officials out there today? It doesn't look like it today. It's been a busy holiday. Everybody's been kind of resting up, so. Okay, presentations. Do we have any presentations today? Okay. Consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull any items from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to pull J, L, M, N, and O, please.
J, L,
M, N, and O.
N, and O.
Items pulled.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve A through L and K? Oh, excuse me, A through I and K.
Second.
Did I pull something on the? No. Okay. Yeah, I did add K. Okay. Okay, I have a first, do I have a second? Or?
Director Nathan, I believe, made the motion to approve the remaining of the consent agenda.
And we have a second? Okay. Can I have a vote? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
5 in favor, motion carried.
Dale, excuse me a minute. Could I request that when you record the minutes that you not take the items that are a part of the consent agenda that we've removed and mix those in with the items that are on the consent agenda? It needs to be listed as separate board items.
Okay, we could do that. We usually have a separate motion once they're pulled. Is that your request?
If you look at the minutes from the last meeting, they were commingled, and I'd like to have them kept separate. That was
Okay, will do.
Sorry. Cheryl's going to come up and we're going to talk about item J.
Okay, so give me just a moment so I can pull it out. Okay, so for item J, it is a new rule that we're requesting approval from the board for painting of projects. That could be painting homes, walls, trim, just about anything that you can paint on the exterior of the property. The purpose of the rule is to establish our painting protocol for the permits. What does a member have to do in order for them to be able to apply for a permit? So it basically gives some general direction on what the committee is looking for as long as they have a sample and an application that is submitted with the information. So was there any questions somebody would like to ask regarding the rule?
I have two questions for you. The first question is, who decides what earth tones are, and have we made accommodations for, as design trends change, moving from earth tones to perhaps other type of tones? How do we accommodate that?
The answer is staff. Earth tones are something that can be done over counter, same-day permits through the staff. And we basically look for anything that is of like a natural, lighter color of tans and very, very pale browns, not very deep in browns. And then anything that is white, sometimes black. Very rarely do we ever do grays or blues over the counter. So we're talking probably about an array of probably about 20 different colors. We have several different, I guess you call them like samples that you can look for that we carry. Some of them are from Dunn Edwards, some of them are from one of the other paint places. So members could actually look from there to see which color they would like as well. Now, as the second part of your question is, do we go for trends? Yes, we do. We probably approve, I want to say, hundreds of paint permits per year. And of that, there's probably about, I want to say, a handful that have become new. One of the ones is a dark blue color. I believe you'll find that one over up on Canyon Lake Drive North. And there's also the chocolate brown house. Some of those, unfortunately, were done prior to a permit. And so there was one of them we actually had to go ahead and ask them to come back and repaint the house because it was just too dark. So yes, we do open up ourselves for new trends. We don't want to box ourselves in because really it is of the eye of the beholder. But if it's like a chartreuse or a pink or a purple, we're probably not going to say yes to those particular colors.
Okay, thank you for that. I also want to know, how do we define aesthetically pleasing?
It's a very good question. The committee has been granted the overall authority, if you want to call it, to be able to approve colors. What they'll do is they will generally, if there's a question about a color, especially if it's one that we cannot approve over the counter, they'll go out to the neighborhood to see, is it going to be an eyesore to the community, not just, the color. The color itself might be beautiful, but it may not look well enough for the actual area. So they look for the surrounding houses to see what those houses look like and to make sure it's going to, come into play with the rest of them. So I hope that answers your question. If not, we can have John, who's our chairperson, to elaborate a little bit more on how they do it.
It does, in a way. I think that can be interpreted as some personal bias involved in that. I think one of the reasons we've moved to Canyon Lake is because we are custom homes, we're not tract homes. So I understand that we don't want a bright orange house in the middle of the neighborhoods and stuff like that, but I just think that we just need to be careful on how we make those decisions. So thank you.
I personally happen to agree with you as a staff member. There are times that staff even puts their 2 cents in, even though we don't get a power of the vote. When it comes to getting those colors out there, we want to make sure we're fair. And what the beauty of it is that the end result, if the member doesn't like the decision of the committee, they always have the opportunity to go to the board.
I was going to say that my time on the committee, we've never had anybody appeal any of the decisions when we recommended something. Usually we do ask people to look at maybe a lighter color, and they agree. When we have a conflict of thought, we do ask them to paint it on the house. Usually we had about any kind of just a small painting of the wall, and we're really only talking about wall color. For trim, we have about everything in the community, from black to white to red.
White, blue.
Yeah, everything, and blue. And you mentioned orange. We do actually have a house that's painted burnt orange, in the neighborhood. It's, and we have yellow. Most people, when they ask for yellow, we usually ask them to kind of go with Little Harbor yellow, because there's a house, the first house that was ever painted yellow was on Little Harbor. Did you want to mention the little error?
No. Oh, you-
Okay.
There is one correction that we would like to make to the rule where it basically states painted. I think, if I look at it here,
Second sentence.
it's the second sentence. It says painted a new project, actually it's supposed to be painting a new project. And also to answer your question, the 5 committee members don't always agree, so they go based off of a vote. So if there's one person that adamantly disagrees, they can actually cast their vote on that, and we have that on our agenda.
Thank you very much. That's answered all of my questions.
I would just like to request that if something does come for appeal, that you give us a real clear explanation, because I'd hate to think that this group has to decide all those things that you guys are working on.
I agree.
And I guess to that, I assume that there would be considerable work done to try to come to middle ground with the owner, so we wouldn't have to try to make that decision. I do appreciate, the care that you guys give to this, because I think our community looks great.
And the reason why we asked for the rule, there was never any guidance before. So, there just wasn't any guidance, and we decided, we need something to what we actually do. We want to be transparent just as well as everybody else, so make it easy for the member. Thank you.
And one more thing, there's no fine associated with this. This is just an informational rule only.
At the end of the day, the association does have to take and consider aesthetics, because unfortunately, there's always going to be that judgment call. As we've said here, the staff has some ability to approve, the committee has some ability to approve, and at the end of the day, the board has the ability to approve. So, we'd like everybody to paint their houses and keep it freshly painted. We don't want to deter that. The staff's happy if you just go on up with your color swatch and get the permit. That would be great. Is there any issue, Teresa, with changing the grammar on this rule?
I typically try to stay away from terms like earth tones, only because it is ambiguous, and chocolate brown could be considered an earth tone because brown, but if it's up to the board and it's up to ACC to use their discretion in the aesthetics, and as long as it's harmonious with the intent of the community, the courts will uphold the Dolan King decision, which upholds the aesthetic opinions of ACCs and boards.
Okay.
Did you get your question answered about?
No, my question wasn't really answered. We're changing the grammar on one of the term in the grammar.
It's okay to use earth tones, but my concern
I'm
is
talking
that
about the painted. She has to have it changed from painted to painting.
the typo, it's okay to make that change here and still accept it.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept item J as written with the minor modification from painted to painting.
A second.
Board discussion? Anybody just want to discuss it? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
5 in favor, motion carried.
Moving on to item L, vehicle stickers. That's number L. Corey, you're going to come up and...
Okay, my question on L, M, and N are the same questions, so we could address all three at the same time, if that's acceptable? Or do we have
Let's
to do...
discuss the issues, and then we'll move down and vote on them one at a time.
Okay.
So if you
I support that. I would like Corey to explain these again, and then we deal with them individually,
okay.
and
Corey.
along with Jeannie's issues.
Okay, my specific question is, how are we going to implement this change? How are we going to, we're now doing the mandatory RFIDs and the change in passes. And for example, I just got my new decal. So I'm a year, I would be a year out from getting the new parking decal. I already have an RFID. I was one of the first ones to get one. So that's my specific question, is how do we roll this out to get the new decals out in a timely manner?
Okay. Should I answer the question first, or do you want me to go through the background, or?
Why don't you go through the background and then address the item L item,
Okay.
which is a little different than the guest pass thing. So if we could just
Sure.
stay with the parking pass.
All right, so the background on the rule revision for GR 6.8, referring to the vehicle stickers, is that the association is in the process of transitioning the membership away from the vehicle decal and towards the RFID transponder for community access. When the transition is complete, the decal will be replaced with the transponder, which will grant the access, and a permanent parking decal identification, a permanent parking decal for identification within the community. The proposed rule change would have the following impact on the membership. Number one, it would update the rule to remove the limit to 4 free decals, and it would also remove the fee language for additional decals. Number two, it would eliminate the annual proof of registration requirement. Homeowner transponders will be active until the property is sold. And lastly, it would clarify that a lessee transponder will be active for the duration of the lease, which is a maximum of 1 year, and not based on the vehicle's registration expiration. So in terms of how do we actually implement this, what we talked about is once the RFID signs, or excuse me, the LED signs are up at the gates, we talked about establishing a deadline for the entire community to come in and get the free RFID. We also talked about communicating that deadline through those LED signs. So as you're entering the community daily, you know that by this date, I need to have the RFID on my vehicle. Number two is we would allow members to keep the current, if the current vehicle decal is still valid, we would allow you to keep that on your vehicle for parking identification purposes only. So it would no longer be valid for access as of the date that we establish. The following year, when you come in to renew, well, ideally, the following year when you come in to bring us your new registration, at that point we would give you the permanent parking decal and continue update your transponder so that it would not expire.
Okay, but according to this, we're eliminating the annual proof of registration. So I wouldn't be coming in the following year to bring you my registration.
The way I envisioned it working was that you would see the decal has an expiration date, and that would trigger you to come into the office. Alternatively, we can try and roll it out. We can try and push the members to come in and get it sooner. The way I see it happening is people will wait until that decal expires.
Okay, sorry. So if we do have expired decals and we don't decide to come in and get the new parking decal, what would happen to us? Because our RFID is still active.
Well, so that's a good question. So with the RFID, we can control the expiration date. I would recommend that we leave the expiration date on there for those individuals who haven't come in to get the permanent parking decal. You get an email notification saying, hey, your transponder's set to expire. That triggers you to come into the office. We issue you the new decal, and we update your transponder so that it's active indefinitely.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we've been under an extended 30-day review period. I wondered if you'd received any comments from members about this transition that's going on right now, that you're proposing.
I have not received any feedback on this.
Okay, thank you.
Corey, the decal envision for the future, calling it a parking decal, but when someone gets to the gate and they have a decal in their window, is that going to get them access?
No, that would be the RFID transponder only.
So
The
what's the
transponder would
procedure?
provide the access.
What's the procedure going to be when somebody pulls to the gate and the RFID transponder doesn't activate the gate?
Sure. Staff should be making contact with those individuals, gate staff. They can identify, or they can look at the transponder number and type that into the software system, and that tells staff if the transponder is active or expired. If the transponder is active, direction is to tell them, hey, something, well, in your particular instance, the decal wouldn't provide access, so it would be to ask them to turn around and be verified via the guest line, because if something's not right. In most cases, that would be the individual's membership has expired, or they've possibly moved out of the community and they're attempting to gain access, but to answer your question, it would be staff contact, looking up the number in the system. If there's an issue, making them turn around and be verified through the guest line.
And then for the person who doesn't want to necessarily follow the rules and they decide they're going to sell their car, and one of the things they want to entice somebody in buying their car is that this car comes with access to Canyon Lake. Because as long as they don't tell the POA office that they've sold their car, that car will continue to be able to come in and out of the gate. And that's the part I'm concerned about. And that's why I think the registration, even though it may not be necessary, is still probably something that we should do on an annual basis just to verify or validate that the owner of the car is still the same owner of the car. Otherwise, that scenario could happen. And it could happen, however many times people want to let it happen.
Yeah, I guess that is a possibility that could happen. In today's world, if somebody has a vehicle decal, they could potentially, if they don't inform us, that vehicle could technically have access. So that is something to consider. The idea was to try to reduce the number of visits that members had to come into the office, but that is something to consider.
I believe you told us before that there was a feature that we're not using, where it's license plate recognition.
Yeah, so license plate recognition for access, we have talked to our gate vendor about that. We've actually talked to the president of the company, and he does not recommend that we explore that option. The reason being is that he has communities that have tried to use that license plate recognition system, and it has an accuracy rate in the high 80s, low 90s. And he's saying that's just not good enough for access.
Could that be used as a backup to cover what Tom was talking about?
How so?
It seems like the system, if 80% accuracy is pretty low, but if the system in the background was sitting there, it reads the RFID number, and it checks the license plate. Of course, if the car is sold, wouldn't know. The license wouldn't change.
We still
Excuse me, wasting your time. Sorry.
It's okay. And I don't think the software has that capability it just wouldn't. If it doesn't know it wouldn't know to research that.
Do you sense how many hours are spent processing the annual issuance of the decals? Is that a huge amount of time?
In office traffic, that's a daily occurrence. That's I don't know if I could put a percentage to it, but it's something that we deal with very frequently on a daily basis.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve this as written with the exception of number 2 in the rule. I think we should keep the annual proof of registration. So get rid of the part that says eliminate annual proof of registration. But I'm okay with the lease being the term of the transponder and the reduction of the limit on the free ones. So my motion is to remove number 2 and approve the rest as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Question?
Any discussion?
Yeah, Tom, would you consider extending the time from annual to maybe every 2 years, every 3 years, just to honor the fact that we spend a lot of time renewing registrations? Forever's a long time. That's what I was thinking.
So yeah, is there
That's a discussion item. I'm just.
Well, another idea could be too, is that you just have to send in, you get a notice, you send in a copy of your registration so that you're not going into the office, the staff isn't interacting with with you, and then you just renew the RFID at that time as well. I mean, it could be done electronically, it could be done to eliminate the face-to-face, but I still think a registration check needs to happen. But I think there's ways to do it using technology and eliminate the face-to-face.
Yeah, absolutely. With the idea of moving away from a decal that we issue every time, we could definitely look at other options, including email.
Once the parking pass was issued, all you'd have to do is have the document in hand. They wouldn't have to come in, they could email it or something like that, and you could do it basically via email.
Yes.
So you wouldn't have to have the person come in, you don't have to give them a sticker, they don't have to go out there. So that's a possibility. Chris, you have an opportunity to make a subsidiary motion?
Just want to ask another question. I do believe that our members do have to communicate with us annually to verify that they're still residents. Is that
Yes.
something we do?
Yes, we do send out, and we're required to annually send out a notice for mailing address updates and things like that. If ownership on the property were to change, then we would be notified of that through other channels. That would primarily be
So
us.
is there a possibility that we could add to that verification that they still own the same vehicles?
Yeah, we control what goes on that bit of information that gets sent out, so, yeah.
Because it seems to me that'd be similar to what you're talking about. We're already gathering that information, that we just needed to process that and make sure that the RFIDs were still valid.
Yeah, something along the lines of either listing the vehicles on the property, or a reminder to the effect of, hey, RFID, your vehicle has access into the community, please confirm that these are up to date, or have you had any changes to vehicles? Yes, we could do something like that.
So the discussion would be not necessarily a registration check, but simply a document from the member saying that they still own the car on an annual basis? Is that what you're talking about, Chris? So,
Along with the verification of address. You know, we do an annual verification of address, correct? Is that what you said?
We do, yes.
So you have to send that back in, and at the same time we're asking for that verification, we'd ask for verification that they still own those cars.
so that would be fairly effective. If the member would just have to get an email, say, that, we know their email, they can say, hi, this is me, this is my address, just want to verify I still have those
Well,
cars.
and like I said, we go through that process now every year.
Yeah.
So I'd like to offer an amendment to the motion that we substitute number 2 for adding vehicle ownership verification with our annual membership verification. I think that's a good way to say it.
So it's a subsidiary motion. Got that? I'll second that.
Okay?
And vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5 in favor, motion carried.
I would recommend that you put it out for another 30-day reading because you made a substantive change to the rule as originally proposed.
Okay, so tell us how we do that. Do we withdraw what we just did? Do we vote to strike it, or what would you suggest?
Well, you can make the change that you've made, but put it out for a new reading with the changes that you've just proposed, so the membership has an opportunity to comment on it.
So the subsidiary motion would go from the motion to approve to a motion for a 30-day reading.
Correct.
That work?
Okay, I'll make that motion.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5 in favor, motion carried.
Corey, we still have you. L? Nope, actually, we're M.
Yes, so, let's see. Agenda items M and N are essentially the same thing. They apply to two different types of membership that we have here, the sub-associate and the resident member. The idea is the same, though, and it's in reference to the vehicle decal. The proposed rule change would clarify that the transponder and parking decal issued to the sub-associate in this for L, will be active for the duration of the membership and not based on the vehicle's registration expiration. Those memberships are valid for a year at a time, and they have to be renewed annually.
So I would entertain the same motion that we just did, basically for this last one, and say that we should apply that same standard here for both M and N.
Let's
So
stay
that we
with,
modify it so that there isn't a forever on it, but it's the membership could go on forever if they didn't move, and that would mean that then their decal would go on for as long as that membership stayed active.
So we'll deal with one item at a time, and that would be M. So you're saying that basically you'd like to make a motion, basically mirroring the motion on L?
Yes.
So the motion is that item 2 will now read a annual verification of ownership along with a 30-day read.
Yep.
So that's your motion?
I make that motion.
Do we have a second? I'll second. All in favor?
Well, go slow.
Okay.
In actually reading the red marks on the rule, it says that the transponder and parking detail, which will expire on an annual basis from date of issuance of the sub-associate membership. So I believe maybe it's already covered.
Yes, that is correct. Those are annual memberships.
Oh, they are annual memberships.
So I think that I don't think we need the motion.
And that was going to be my comment as well. I mean, I have to bring in my son's sub-associate membership every year in order to get his decal and his RFID renewed. So it's already part of the sub-associate membership renewal to prove, that he has an address here in the lake. So
Yes, I see that now. It says it expires annually, so that's satisfactory for me.
So
I withdraw my motion.
thank you.
So do I have a motion? We still have to do the approval.
So once again, the question is, how will this be implemented? As they're bringing in the sub-associate renewals, then we will implement the parking decal and the RFID if they don't have them?
Yes.
So it could be a cycle of a year from whenever this goes into effect?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Corey, just from a POA perspective, is there a purpose or a reason that we would want to confirm current registrations with vehicles, not taking into account RFIDs or parking passes, just that members have vehicles that are currently registered?
Not really. Currently, we capture the information and we store the information. We don't use vehicle registration information for anything specifically. We would still have a vehicle registration on file. It just might not be, with what we're talking about, it might not be the most current up-to-date version, but the information contained on the registration we're more concerned about license plate numbers, and we would already have that information stored. So I can't really see any value of holding on to an up-to-date registration if we're going to have a registration on file, if that makes sense.
And then second question, the way it reads here just says that the sub-associate will be active for the duration of the membership. Right now, that is a one-year membership?
Yes.
Always?
Yeah, always.
If we change that to something else, then that would ultimately apply here then too. So like if we change a sub-associate to 2 years or 3 years, then this particular rule would be similarly impacted because now the membership cycle would change.
Yes. I think if we ever decided to make that change, we would look at the rule in its entirety and the effects that it has. And so that would be something that we would definitely consider.
So I will make a motion to approve item M as written.
I'll second.
All in
Be my
favor?
guest.
Aye.
Aye.
5 in favor, motion carried.
All right, Corey, you're not going to escape us. So let's go ahead and go on to N.
Okay.
Very similar.
Yes, it's the exact same thing. The difference between a sub-associate and a resident membership, a sub-associate is set aside for family members of the homeowner. A resident member is for non-family members. It's limited to one per property, and it's for somebody who, again, is non-family that resides with the homeowner. Everything else remains the same. It is an annual membership. All the requirements, there's the proof of residency. The requirements are exactly the same as a sub-associate.
And my question was going to be how it's going to be implemented, so I'm sure it's the same as the sub-associate, that as that membership is up for renewal, then you will give them the new decal and make sure that they have the RFID.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Do I have a motion or
I move approval of item N.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5 in favor, motion carried.
Okay, item
President
O.
Welty, excuse me, I believe we might have a member comment on this item.
Oh, okay.
Did you fill out a form,
Sorry, Travis.
Travis? Okay, I'll grab one for you. Are you okay with that?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Just give us your chalk and lot.
As I'm reading this, they said this is for a resident member, somebody who doesn't live here, you can issue.
Travis, can you sit down and put the mic on because there are people at home that may want to hear you.
I'm confused as to what a resident member is. I thought I heard it said that that is a person who doesn't live here, but you can issue it to one person. Is that?
No. A resident member is an individual who lives at the property with the homeowner, but is not family.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
But Corey, I do believe that it also includes the people that are tenants who are renting houses. Those are considered resident members?
No, we actually have a separate category for them.
What are they called?
We call them lessees.
Excuse me?
Lessees.
Leases, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve, I believe yours up. Item O, ratification to a change order for the parking lot project.
Okay, so my question is, on this item, what I'd like to see in the future, and if you can give us a verbal answer today, that would be great, but if you can't, you can't, is from now on, when we have a request to amend a contract, I would like to see the original contract amount, any subsequent amendments, the current amendment, and then the new total, contract total, just other than just the amendment amount.
Understood.
So do you know what our total contract amount is at this point in time?
And I apologize, I thought I did list that on here. I do not have a total contract amount for you now.
Steve, can you give us an approximate value?
The approximate value is about $180,000
Plus
Okay, thank you.
28.
plus 28.
I will make a motion to approve item O as written.
I'll second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
5 in favor, motion carried.
Moving on to 6.1, approval of revised board meeting policy. Harmony, that's your discussion?
Yes, sir. Every year, we have the board review our annual policies and our board calendars, our committee policies, et cetera, and we just make any necessary changes to accommodate the new desires of the board or what they'd like to see done. So here, I believe we have a few changes, minor changes to committee meetings.
Harmony, I'm reading this. It appears we're going to give the board member, the liaison, a little bit more involvement in the committee meetings. So that's what we're changing the word to be involved in we're changing the word. The committee liaison will not participate in deliberations. We're now allowing the liaison board member to participate in deliberations, but will not involve themselves in decision making. So they can give a little bit of direction to the committee at the time, but they will not be involved when it comes down to the decision-making.
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I apologize. Did we do 6.1?
That is
Sorry, I thought it was 6.2. I make a motion, we approve 6.1 as submitted.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Oh, excuse me, discussion? Oh,
Sure.
generally speaking, Bob's question is, does this change the time of the meetings? Effectively, the general meeting schedule is 6 o'clock on the first Tuesday, barring certain holidays and certain Taco Tuesdays, that will be the date. So generally speaking, that's not going to change. Just simply changes a little bit of the board policy regarding committees. And when Bob, you're on a committee, so when the liaison's there from the board, it gives the board the opportunity, the liaison, to speak a little more.
Well, I was going to bring that up, not at this meeting, but while we're on it, just 6 o'clock, it makes it very hard, I think, for a lot of members to attend. Getting home from work, a lot of people have to drive a distance. People that are retired, it's not a problem, but with traffic and all, getting home 5:45 and trying to get ready to get down here, and you might want to have something, you want to speak. So you can watch it on TV. You can't hear me? Oh. You might want to watch, a lot of times watch it on TV, but if you have something to say, then you can't really participate. 6 o'clock, what are you supposed to do? I mean, we expect somebody to take off early from work? Is that, like my wife, for instance, she'd like to come and speak sometime. She doesn't get home till 5:45. Pulls in the driveway at 5:45. I'm sure there's other people that are running into the same problem. We used to have it at 7, and we switched to 6. I'm not sure why we did that.
Okay, I think this agenda item is just a specific thing regarding committees.
Well, I'm so sorry. So this item is actually the board policy, so I was speaking to the committee changes. It's separated into 2 items, and he's referencing the time frame, which is in our board policy on the first page.
Yeah. It does speak about that.
But it's been 6 for a while, hasn't it? That's a change?
Yeah, there's no change
There's no
proposed.
change.
Yeah.
Well, it's been 6 for a while, but it was 7 for years. Before that, it was 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
wasn't a problem for my wife, and I'm sure there's other people. I'm saying that, especially people that come from San Diego, let's say, or parts in Orange County, get off at 4:30 in the afternoon, and that's 4 even. That's kind of early. And even if you don't want to eat dinner on time, you have to rush to get home. You're getting home, and you have to turn right. Might as well not even get home. And you still might not be able to make it here if you want to speak. I'm not talking about if you don't want to speak, because you can watch it on television or streaming. But if you have something to say, then you're kind of out. So what was the reason we changed from 7 to 6 in the first place? I know it's been that way for a while, but I've been here for 20 years, and I don't know, 17 of those years probably it was at 7. It was maybe more than that. At 7 o'clock, the board meetings.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't at 6 all the time.
Any of the board members have any comment?
I think it's a reasonable request myself. I think that we are attempting this year to have more interaction and communication with our community. This is an issue that we've talked about. We recognize that we held our workshop later a couple of weeks ago for that very reason. I think this is a valid thing for us to consider. I will go so far as to move approval of the revised board policy.
Excuse me, we have a motion and a second to approve.
I'm sorry. I would like to I would like to amend the motion to change the starting time of our meetings from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. You'll need a second.
If we could go back, that's what I'd like to see done. I mean, it makes more sense for accommodating members.
That's
We
what
all
I'm
have
trying
to
to
have a
do.
chance.
Do we have a second on the
Leave it at
motion?
that.
Do we have a second on the subsidiary motion? I'll second it. All in favor?
I think one of the reasons that it was backed up in time to answer your question, Bob, is that people like this, and over there.
Overtime?
They spend a lot of time in the office during the day, and then these evenings run pretty late sometimes, and it's just another hour added to their day. So in trying to be sensitive to our staff and our entire work crew here, we don't want to make it too burdensome on them. Plus, after these meetings, we also have ACC appeal hearings. They can go on for some time. So the later we start, the later we're here, and sometimes people don't make good decisions at 10 and 11 o'clock at night.
Oh,
So,
I understood that fully.
I think the thought was that if there's something that's that pressing for a member and they really want to be here to speak,
Yeah.
then they'll probably make a change to their schedule on that day if they really need to be here. There's always the ability to speak through email. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's any more important or less important if you're here speaking in the microphone, or if you send the board an email at board@canyonlakepoa.com. Your message still gets across, and we want to encourage that, to make sure that people do have a voice and that they have the ability to speak their minds and tell us what they think.
Well, then-
This is just an opportunity, not the only one.
Well, in that case, we ought to all just save time, and we should all just make it that way. Members don't even show up, we'll just email or come to, or watch it on TV, right? Or take off work, plan on taking off work early. Maybe some people can't take off work early. That's
Okay.
another thing. It's just the fact of the matter is, I understand staff and even the directors. It's a long day, but that's part of the job. It's just the way it goes. We're members. It's a need. It was always there. Now all of a sudden we want to change
Okay,
it
Bob,
to be more streamlined. Members should be priority. And it was that way.
Any other comments?
I guess I would be amenable to the change to 7 PM if we could monitor it and see if it does make any change in the number of members that show up and speak. Because otherwise, I think, I agree with the fact the effect on staff is rather long. But I would be glad to change it. We could measure it. If more people show up, then it was a positive change.
Well, it's 1 hour. I mean, if you look at it logically, it'd be 1 hour.
There is an option of moving the ACC issues to 6, which is 1 or 2 people who are very concerned about their issue, which probably could take the time off because it's 1 member or 2 members.
Good idea.
If we would move them to 6, we could start that meeting at 6, and then we could move the general session to 7. That's something that we could have as an option, which might be more amenable. Is there any comments from staff on how that would go? Cheryl, that would affect you a little bit. Would moving ACC to 6 and then the 7 for the main board be an issue?
My only concern with that is if we have more than 2, it might run into the 7 o'clock hour, and if that's something that the board would want to do. There have been times where we have had 3+ appeals. We try really hard not to have the appeals come to the board, but unfortunately, it's the members,
Well, the option could be that we open up at 6, and then at 7, we start the second meeting, and if whatever business is left to finish with ACC, we could move later. I know it's inconvenient for 1 member or 2, but it sounds like there's a lot of convenience for a lot of different members. So if that's something the board would like to consider.
I think, like Cheryl said, there's some unpredictability in an ACC hearing, and we don't know what's going to happen. It might go on time, it might not go on time. I'm also just a little torn in the idea that we're trying to accommodate what usually is a very, very small crowd of the members. Even when we had the meeting at 7 o'clock, it very rarely was a large group of people that came here. So, we're talking about a community of tens of thousands or 15,000 people, and we may get 30, 40 people in this room. So to accommodate, changing a schedule, putting our staff all here an hour later every night to maybe see a few extra bodies here at the building, I'm not sure that that's necessarily worth it.
So we were streamlining it at that point. We had all those years without that. You've got a good idea, I think.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order and then a request. We're having a discussion here. That's really not appropriate. We've heard what you had to say. I appreciate that very much. We have an amendment on the table that needs to be dealt with, and then we need to deal with the motion. So I'd like to call the question on the amendment.
We have a first and a second on the amendment.
No, we have a subsidiary motion by Director Poland and no second yet.
I'll second the subsidiary motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I believe I did. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I hear 3 ayes. Director Nathan?
No.
Director Nathan says nay. Director Birmingham?
I'd like to know the way it's stated.
I'm sorry, is that a nay?
Nay.
All right, 3 in favor, 2 against, motion carries.
So that's going to be ACC, 6 o'clock?
No, his motion was simply to go to 7.
Just 7.
That's all the motion was.
Thank you for the interruption. But that's not what I came here to say. I still got that.
Oh, sorry, okay. Make sure you fill out, if you do need to talk and we're on an item, just come on up and fill out a sheet. Travis, you dropped one off up there? Was that on this issue? Okay.
Travis Montgomery, 3863010. I guess now that you've already passed it, but was the subsidiary motion including the original action, which is in red there, the decision-making, did that get adopted also?
I believe so, Harmony, was that adopted?
Yes, so this was to approve the board policy with the modification to make the board meetings at 7 PM.
Okay, well, then my comment was going to be on that 7 PM. I think that's good. It's only changed to 6 within the last year. I think when all of you started, or the new people, Jim Berringham in particular, the meeting started at 7. It was sometime during the year last year that it was moved to 6. I very much appreciate the burden on staff. However, having been a city employee and had to attend city council meetings for the benefit of the community and the 4,800 property owners, that's something you just kind of goes with the job. Not uncommon to have those people come in at 10 o'clock that morning if you're concerned with that. But that's just kind of what goes with the job in doing that we might have to inconvenience a bit of our staff for the convenience of the homeowners, because at 6 o'clock, I still started to think 7 o'clock tonight and had to remind my wife, hey, we got to eat in the middle of the afternoon because we got a 6 o'clock meeting. So, but you've already done it, so I guess you really didn't need my comments, but thanks for honoring my request anyway.
All right. We've already.
I know it's approved and all, but not to beat a dead horse, but there's a lot of people that
Bob,
scream.
we kind of had the 3 minutes and we kind of moved on. So you're welcome to come back up on the general comments.
I know it'll be on.
And we can you turn the mic off? Okay. On 6.2, revised committee guidelines, Harmony.
Yes, sir. So this is much of the same we were just discussing. Annually, we look at our committee guidelines and make any necessary changes. This year, I believe we only have 2 proposed updates, and that is to eliminate the dark hours of 2 of our committees, facilities and recreation. So staff approves that you approve this revised committee policy.
Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the revised committee guidelines.
Second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Okay, any member comments now that okay. Can I call for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
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 5 in favor, motion carried.
Steve, it looks like you're back up. Funding for wave attenuation.
In early 2018, the POA finished 22 additional rental docks next to the lodge, just directly out here. These docks are also adjacent to the older rental docks, and the docks currently receive some wake action from the main lake 35-mile-an-hour speed zone. Our plans to combat the wave action is to use a wave attenuation system designed to disperse the wave energy when it passes. These types of units are popular on lakes and are like a makeshift floating breakwater. We eventually would like to add 22 more additional rental docks since the waiting list has almost 300 people waiting for a slip. The wake system is a floating device which has built-in flotation and is anchored to the lake bottom, which is designed to provide major attenuation of wake caused by boats and wind. The system displaces wave energy both above and below, since the wave energy is carried not only above the surface, but below the surface as well. We would like to do 2 test sections to make sure that they'll work for application before we bring the entire project before the board for approval. The total project, including the 2 test sections, would be approximately $98,700 for 200 feet of this system. Later on, we could also use these as North Ski to protect the docks from the wake up in that area. Project for the 2 sections, each 20 foot in length, is $19,740 from the Capital Improvement Fund 05670. Staff requests the Board of Directors to approve the funding of $19,740 from the Capital Improvement Fund 05670 for 2 20-foot sections of a wave attenual device.
Any questions for Steve?
Army, could you put up page 90? It shows a cross-section of the wake stopper.
We have a different board book on screen than the numbers I think you're looking at.
Do you have the picture that you can show, the cross-section?
I don't believe we have any pictures included in the public distribution of this section.
Okay, then I'll comment that this wave stopper is about 4 feet tall, and it'll be 200 feet long. And do they have a copy of the picture of where it'll be located on the lake? Do you have a copy of that?
Do you mean to put up on screen? I don't believe we have any pictures included with this board action item.
Okay. So as I understand it, and Steve, please verify this 200 feet will go along what is now the white buoys that separates the 5-mile-an-hour zone from the 35-mile-an-hour zone?
Where we were going to replace or place them is probably about 25 to 25 degree angle off the white buoys, off the 5-mile-an-hour zone.
Okay. My concern is in your test, not only to test whether it takes care of the wave attenuation, but I think that we ought to be paying attention to how it affects boat traffic on the lake. And it seems to me it would be wise to block that 200 feet at the same time you're doing the test, so that we could judge if it has a severe impact on the operation of boats on the lake.
We could place buoys along that, and maybe some floating buoys to block it, well marked, of course.
I think that would be a good idea, because I'd like to hear back from the community about the impact that they feel it has on the lake.
Okay.
So with that, I'll move approval of item 6.3, the funding for the wave attenuation device for 2 20-foot sections, and include the request that they place a barrier over the 200-foot zone that the ultimate barrier will cover.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? I have a question for Steve. This appears to be proprietary docking system. On here it says we have a secondary contract, that an option to go to the 200 feet that's included in this vote.
No, I'm just asking for the money for the test sections before we commit to a full contract.
Full contract. One of my concerns is it's a proprietary system, right? So if we hire and do the 40 feet, what's to prevent, now that we've started down this road of what model we've picked, for us to switch models would be kind of awkward. And since he has proprietary rights, it seems like, how do we protect our price, so to speak?
So wave attenuation, it's a very special, the devices are very special. There's none two alike. The very few other manufacturers I found, actually only 2 other manufacturers I found throughout the United States. One has been, communication is very slow, and the other was out of business. So switching models or trying to find something that's very similar is not going to be existent to any manufacturer you use.
It seems like I saw a second price in here for the completion of the project. Was that in the package?
The completed price was $98,700, or was $98,700 for the 200 feet.
I'd like to make a subsidiary motion. That's how we accept the first motion for the 18, as long as we could get an option from the on the contract to complete it for the 98.7, so that protects our pricing.
Yeah, our pricing is protected. I've already had the discussion with.
Yeah, well, make sure we have that option in the contract.
Okay.
And that's my subsidiary motion. We approve with the subsidiary option agreement at our discretion to be signed.
Okay. Yep.
Is there a second to the subsidiary motion?
Second?
Any member comment? Bob, make sure you got to fill out a form there, so let's get your form up front. Yeah. Travis will get one for you, Bob. We'll let you, in this case, come up and talk, and you can fill it up at the end.
The newest pod that we have of slips, we're going to add to those, but if you'll notice the distance from those slips to the old slip, the first slips towards the lighthouse, the oldest ones, the distance is like 2 to 3 times, at least 2 times any of the other ones, and some of them I know it's 3 times. And that's good, but we're going to add the others if we go with this, so he's going to have the wave attenuation, which I agree that's needed. But before we do that test, don't you think it'd be a good idea to squeeze that? We're going to have to recover some of that room. There's no reason that the newer slips have, what is that, 150 feet from?
Are you talking about length or distance?
Distance between.
At the narrowest point, it's 44 feet, Bob.
How much?
44 feet at the narrowest point down here. The reason they're placed there is because there was original floating dock system we added onto. We did not want to move 200 feet of dock. It would have been quite costly, the POA. I have no problem discussion in any committees with moving that entire flotilla when we add the additional 22 docks. No problem having a discussion, but the reason why that was put there is because of the original docking system that was there.
But what I'm saying is we're going to do the wave attenuation test. How about moving those first, so then you can, because what Director Poland was talking about is how is that going to affect boat traffic? So if you move those in before you do the testing, it'll be a whole different area to be.
Actually, it would be, if we do add the additional 22 docks, the additional 20 docks would stick out further than the current docks, I mean, closer to the lighthouse.
Okay, so we have a second. Thank you, Bob. Do we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5 in favor, motion carried.
Okay, Steve, you get to stick around and talk about the common area landscape maintenance contract, 6.4.
On June 3rd, the POA put on RFP for professional landscape maintenance, community common area services. We received 5 bids ranging from approximately $20,400 to approximately $32,000, with a yearly increase from 2.5 to 5%. The lowest bid is our current landscape contractor at $20,400 plus a 3% yearly increase. The contractor the staff is recommending was the second lowest at $22,615 a month for the first year, plus a 3% increase thereafter. We feel that the second lowest bid is the best fit for the POA and will give Can Lake community facilities and the attention and care it deserves. They put together a thorough site evaluation and a comprehensive plan to rejuvenate some of the landscape throughout our community, and they presented it to the POA. Not only has this company pledged to bring back the beauty of our parks and the community, they'll also be using electric, environmental friendly and landscape tools, which is much quieter. Not all their tools will be electric, but for the majority they will be. They also have a full crew plus a full-time irrigation tech The contractor has also included a one-time $10,000 enhancement credit to be used anytime during the extent of the contract for community landscape improvement projects outside the contract maintenance duties. This can be used as projects such as the medians inside the main gate that are in need of renovation. Fiscal impact is $22,615 a month, plus a yearly increase of 3% after the first year. This is going to be coming from the operating budget. Contract length is 57 months, August 2019 to April of 2024. I have a ratified recommendation. Staff requests the Board of Directors to approve the monthly amount of $22,615 plus a yearly increase of 3% to the vendor Landscape Logic to come from the operating budget, subject to execution of a written agreement.
Any questions for Steve? Do I hear a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda item as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I'd like to thank Steve and operations for looking closely at the contract and not going with the lowest bid, but giving due consideration to improving the quality of our landscape.
Any member comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Take my vote away. I'm going to recluse myself from this one.
Okay.
Okay.
President Welty recused, 4 in favor, motion carried.
Okay, Steve, you're back. It's Dredge Committee appointment.
There are 4 vacancies on the Dredge Committee. An application was received to fill one of these vacancies from Joe Grasso. He was interviewed by the committee chairman, and the committee chairman gave a recommendation for his approval. He is a current POA member and in good standing. It is recommended the Board of Directors approve the appointment of this member to the Dredge Committee effective July 8th, 2019. And I actually need to ratify that on the members signing a confidentiality agreement.
Do I hear a motion?
I move approval of the addition of Joe Grasso to the Dredge Committee, item 6.5.
Second.
Okay, any member discussion? Jack, go ahead. Let's get your form filled out. Yes, I do.
You find it?
You're good.
Okay. With reference to the appointment, I don't have anything against Joe's appointment. I don't know the man. But the procedure I do have a problem with. The Finance Committee, the Dredging Committee, the gentleman or woman, whoever, should come before the whole committee, not just the chairman. We don't have the slightest idea what background this man has as far as water is concerned. Does he understand the laws? Does he understand some of the requirements, just the minimum part? And we used to do this, and I think they still do it on finance. The person that applies for working on finance, and I served 4 or 5 years as chairman on finance, and the person would come in and everybody on the finance committee would ask them questions and so on, and kind of get a background and see that this is the person we'd like to work with. And then they would make the recommendation to the board. And I think the Dredging Committee is one of those types of committees, same as the architectural. You just don't grab anybody. You need to really check the guy's background, and a lot of people maybe that are on the dredging committee, and I am on the dredging committee, would like to ask him some questions. Why are you applying? What's your background? Do you know anything at all about water? All of these things. And like I say, I have nothing against Joe whatsoever. I don't know him. But I've never met him either, and I think that being on the committee, I should have the right to ask him a few questions. Why do you want to be on the committee? And things like that. That's a reason that I would request that you postpone that until the committee gets a chance to meet with him.
Jack, normally I'd agree with you. The trouble is I don't even think we have a quorum for that committee. They could come out and meet with the existing members, but I think Steve told me that they don't even have enough committee members to create a quorum to do a vote. So the Joe was kind of at it. So he's a bass fisherman, spends hours, and he's on the shoreline. He's watched how the environment of the lake, as far as how that environmental impact on the lake is, it's pretty significant, and his knowledge is good because of all the fishing. And again, the struggle is we don't have a quorum for the committee to recommend anybody because there's not enough people.
What happened to our quorum?
Right, he's right there. Your quorum went away when Chris.
I turned into a board liaison. So Joe,
we used to have
Jack,
a quorum.
Jack, I really appreciate what you're saying, and I agree with you. I was taken by what he wrote in his application. I don't know if you've seen this or not.
No, I haven't.
It says, as a longtime fisherman and a resident of Canyon Lake, I've taken a self-interest in the water conditions and ecosystems of the lake. I fish. I have taken the time to study and educate myself on 700 miles of tributary waters that flow into Canyon Lake and the types of pollutants and sediments it brings into the lake. So I read that, and I thought at least he's claiming to have some understanding, and I really appreciated somebody that wanted to come on the dredge committee that would bring an interest in the water quality, and so that's why I made the motion to add him to the committee.
Well, Chris, I have no problem with that because I've never seen what you've seen. I don't know anything about the gentleman, and again, my comments are not against the gentleman, it's against the procedure, and I would like to see us stick with that procedure so that everybody that's going to be working, especially on a project like that he has some background in it and understands the laws and so on. Otherwise, he's sitting there and the rest of us are trying to carry on.
Yeah, and again, we went to the committee chairman because we don't have a functioning committee, and that kind of created it's kind of a catch-22. How do you get the committee to vote when they don't have enough members to vote? So we're a little stuck on this one.
That's your decision. That's the reason you're on the board.
All right.
Okay, that's my comment.
All right, thank you for your comment, and well appreciated. So,
my husband's getting me a form to fill out. I had no intention of speaking. I think Joe Grasso is a fabulous person. I really like him, and I say that he's done so much for this community, chairing Fiesta Day, chairing Recreation Committee. But there's one thing that I did want to correct. And I don't know if he said this in his application, but Director Poland just mentioned it, resident. And Joe is not a resident of Canyon Lake. He does own property here, that's true. And I don't think that that's a disqualifying thing, that you don't live here. But let's just be clear that he lives on Black Canyon Road in Quail Valley and has lived there for years and loves living there. So I don't think there's anything in our bylaws that say that somebody who owns property here but doesn't live here should not serve on a committee. But let's be clear, Joe is not a resident of Canyon Lake. Thank you.
board discussion?
Somebody clarify for me the official process we're supposed to use. Maybe, Lynn, you can, to select committee members.
Yes, sir. Jack is correct. We have vetted the applications previously through the committees, but if we don't have a quorum, then we've gone through the chairperson or staff recommendations. In regards to Mrs. Horton's comment, the committee guidelines require that you be a prime or associate member to be on a committee. That's the designation there, so it doesn't identify resident or not resident, but if you're an owner or associate member.
Do we know if he's an owner?
He is a property owner. We do not allow leases on committees, just as an FYI.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
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 5 in favor, motion carried.
Okay, we're looking at FRC committee appointments. This would be me. Basically, we've lost 2 members of FRC, and we're short 2 members. If you're looking for where those people went, we moved on to the board. So these 2 people have left FRC, and we're looking to nominate two of the members. We have some recommendations. I want to go ahead. I'm looking for a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we appoint Ted Horton as a member and Alex Cook as the alternate to the FRC.
Second.
Member discussion? Board discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 5 in favor, motion carried.
6.7 is financial charter revision. Susan, are you here? There you are. You snuck in on me, so
The Finance Committee is requesting to change the charter to 7 members and 1 alternate.
So I'm gonna, like last month, make a motion that we table this item. We had some discussion last month and gave direction, I think, from the board comments that this is a newly changed back in December committee down to 5 members. The discussion last month was we were going to let this committee exist and conduct itself with 5 members and see how things go. I'm a little troubled by the idea that 2 weeks later, then this same conversation got introduced to a Finance Committee meeting, and here we are talking about it again. So I'm not sure why. Susan gave a pretty good presentation back in December, explaining the reasons why she wanted this committee to be down to 5 instead of 7. It's been functioning, I think, fine since then. I've been through the budget process with them, and at every meeting up until this last month, I didn't make the June meeting. Don't see any reason to change things right now. It's like we discussed last month. Let's let this thing go with 5 for a while and see how it goes. And if we see an issue or a problem, then we can address the change.
we have a motion to table the action. Do we have a second? That's what you made, a motion to table? Do I have a second?
Motion dies, Black, a second.
Okay, do I have another motion?
I make a motion that we approve item 6.7 as submitted.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Board discussion?
I'd like to ask Susan why she changed her mind.
Truthfully, I did not change my mind, but I'm a servant
quite
of
all
the
right.
committee.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I said I was explaining that I'm a servant of the POA and of the committee, and this was a committee voted on decision to represent this.
So in December, you were reporting on behalf of the committee? Or you're
That's
now
correct.
reporting?
That's correct.
So just help me out. It's 5 or 7. What's your, can I ask you what your position is?
Functionally, the workload works well with the 5 members. We actually have more than 5 members attending the meeting. We have 5 members, we have myself, we have the board liaison, and we have an alternate. So in total, there's 8 people there, and commenting and contributing to the meeting. There are and were other motivations and other viewpoints as to having additional members that would bring an alternate experience, with new members coming on that would aid in the discussion. So my position is basically, it functions well in terms of workload with the size we have now, and the information I presented in December was an outside study. It wasn't my opinion. But like I said, there are other motivating factors that would cause people to have a different opinion in having more members.
So Jeannie, as the board liaison and making the motion, could you comment, please?
Yes, I attended the Finance Committee meeting in June, and the discussion at that time by the members of the committee, they voted and they made a motion that the members be increased to 7 members and 1 alternate. So that was the decision of the committee members. The reason was because, as Susan mentioned, there are some different people that want to be involved. The committee supported all 3 people that originally applied for the committee. They were very happy with every applicant and want to take advantage of the fact that we have some new ideas coming forward.
My comment is the committees serve 2 roles. One, in my mind, obviously is advise the board, and the other role they have that's very important is to represent the community. The addition of the 2 extra members will allow a broader reach of opinions from the community, and the Finance Committee, having been a part of it for many years, sometimes it doesn't have enough representation from the broad base of the community, in my opinion, and bringing in a broader base into these committees so that there's a broader voice of the community members on these committees is extremely important to me. And this opportunity to bring in a more diverse group of people onto this functioning committee would be great. Again, I was the treasurer. I've been a part of it. It's a great committee. But I think I'm not so sure it represents the whole community like it should, and adding these 2 members will, in my mind, go great lengths to a broader representation of all the demographics of the community, and that's really why. I mean, clearly Susan has my support on the ability to function, does a great job. She could function on the side of decision-making with the 5 and do quite well. I'm just not sure the representation from the community as a whole is adequate with that many members. That's strictly it. It has nothing to do with the function of the board, but the broader base representation is important to me.
I will say that the applicants were excellent, and I will confirm that we did like both applicants.
And, what you're saying, I think, is true, and I appreciate the idea of having a mix of people in the committee. Right now, we have probably not a mix that you would like to see. We have that opportunity to reappoint members every October, and that's coming up very quickly. So, assuming that the goal is really the mix, not necessarily the number, I'm still of the idea that I think 5 has been working. I think it makes a better discussion forum for that many members in that time frame and for that meeting. And we're talking about analyzing numbers, and I don't know that whether somebody comes from a youthful or an aged background that makes that big a difference in that particular committee. It's really just analytical data and numbers and reviewing financial statements. If we were talking about things like new amenities in the community or things that really impact our populations and trying to feed from different generations or backgrounds, I would agree with that being much more important. But this committee, I think it's much more important to have minds that work for analyzing financial statements and having a number of people that's going to be effective. I really believe that we should allow this 5-member people or group to go forward, and if we see some kind of failure, then bring it back to 7, rather than just assuming we have to go to 7 again, because that's what the committee wants. I mean, at this point, the committee was 5 people, the vote was 3-2, and one of the people that voted yes was a new appointed member that's an alternate because a regular member wasn't there last month. So I don't think that we should be driven by what the committee wants. We're the board and we dictate what happens to the committee. We're supposed to be giving them the tasks to do. And I think that's part of our failure too, is we need to be better at providing that guidance and what we are actually looking for them to do.
And Tom, I appreciate what you're saying, but you've also been a champion for volunteers. And here we have people that want to volunteer their time to get involved, and I think that's important that we recognize this. We don't get a lot of people to volunteer, and we have 2 other people that really want to volunteer their time and become involved, and I think that needs to be applauded and recognized.
Okay, we have further comments?
I just want to say that I'm going to vote in favor of the motion because I want to err on the side of more community involvement than less, though I appreciate that it's easier to get more done with 5 people than with 7.
We have a motion and a second. Can I get a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
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 No.
4 in favor, 1 against. Motion carries.
Moving on to 6.8, this financial committee appointments. Susan, you're back up again. Don't.
All right, now the Finance Committee is in need of one additional committee member and one alternate. We are proposing that, I didn't put their names here. I apologize for that.
We have
Jason Jernigan and Renee, what's Renee's last? Griffiths. I propose that Jason Jernigan is elected as the new Finance Committee member and Renee Griffiths is the alternate.
Actually, it's the other way around.
I'm sorry. I'm proposing that Renee Griffiths is the new committee member and Jason Jernigan is the alternate. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Renee Griffiths as the Finance Committee member and Jason Jerrigan as the alternate.
Have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Member discussion?
President Welty, can we allow a member?
Come on, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll have you fill the form out as you step down.
You approved minutes earlier this evening that appointed Barry Talbot as an alternate to the Finance Committee. You are now have before you appointing, and you just now passed a motion that said there'd be 7 members and 1 alternate. And now you have before you a motion to appoint somebody else as the alternate, and there's only 1 alternate by the motion you just passed.
I'll take the fault for that, for not making that clear in my board action item tonight. So Barry Talbot would move up and be a full committee member of the Finance Committee.
And that hasn't been acted upon yet.
So we can make, maybe someone would like to make a subsidiary motion to step up his
Well,
status.
and you got to do something about Barry Talbot then.
Yeah, that's why I said the subsidiary motion would be to move Barry to
Okay, all right.
regular status.
It may be a common practice for alternates to step up. Do they actually have to be voted on?
There's a
distinctly?
time frame in our committee policy, I believe. It's either 30 or 60 days or 3 consecutive meetings or 90 days where they would automatically move up. But since this was approved, I believe, at the last meeting, Director Odell could modify her motion to include him and Director Poland could
Isn't it by
second.
default that if we've just increased the committee to 7 and there's only 6, including the alternate, that he's automatically a member?
There's a time frame.
There's a time frame in
After
the
60 days, he would be moved up, I believe.
I think it's 3 consecutive meetings or 60 or 90 days. I'll have to reference the policy, but since we're all pretty clear that it hasn't met that time frame, you can try to include it in this policy or put it on the next agenda.
I'd like to make a subsidiary motion that Barry Talbot become a regular member of the Finance Committee, and that we go ahead and move ahead with the prior, that be added along with the prior motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, no more
President,
member comments. Let's go board comments. Do we have any further comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
I'm sorry, is that 5 in favor for the subsidiary motion? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, motion carried.
Okay, Corey, you get to come back up again. Just want to thank the staff. They do a lot of work, and they try to keep us informed in the loop, so we do appreciate all the work they do. This is the approval of the $20 family vehicle transponder fee schedule edition.
Okay. In May, I presented a policy that would allow for non-resident family members to give them the option to purchase an RFID decal for access into the community. The policy was passed, however, we did have to go out to a 30-day reading for the proposed fee. About a week and a half ago, we had a workshop where several members of the community showed up, and the feedback that we took from that meeting were there were a couple of concerns with the policy, primarily around the verification of ID with each entrance. With the proposed policy, these individuals would not be verified. Each time they entered the community, it would be automatic access with the transponder. The second concern that was raised surrounded the requirements for proving a family member. So since that time, we have begun to explore other options. At this point, I'm going to amend my recommendation and recommend that the Board of Directors table this item as we continue to research alternate options. And if you'd like, I can go over the policy again or answer any questions that you have.
I'd like to make a motion, we table this option to a later date after the staff has time to fully complete their study and come back to us.
I'll second that.
Member discussion? More comment, board discussion? I'll talk a little about this. We did have a workshop on this. There were a lot of concerns were brought up by the members about the level of security that would create. As the dialogue came forward, they were very concerned that the ID of each member wasn't going to be checked. So we're looking into that. And they were also very concerned about what qualified as a family member. At the end of that, at least I had some kind of questions about where those lines were. So as there's still some unresolved issues about this, I just recommend that we table this, give the staff to do more research, consult with the attorneys, come back and give us a more thorough description or direction on what we're looking at. We are looking to speed directions to the gate. We are seriously looking for solutions to check IDs on a lot of these people coming in and making it simpler and quicker. And we're going to go ahead and move ahead with this. Also, I would just want to encourage everybody to use the Fast Pass because that will help speed access to the gate. So if you do call in a member, look for the Fast Pass option on the website. That will allow that person to be identified instantly at the gate and they won't have to be looked up in the system. So that's
not at Disneyland though. Fast Pass I think is Disneyland. It's E-Pass, right?
Yeah. E-Pass.
So yeah, the E-Pass is it'll be on your phone. You would get sent an email or a link to connect to have yourself scanned at the gate with what's already in your hand as a pass rather than having to get one issued. It achieves the same goal, gets the person out of the guest lane and into the other two lanes. This one would be more controlled too. It would be by the day rather than just on the window and unlimited for the rest of the year. To me, this makes the most sense just to have e-passes also, just because I was kind of a believer in it until we started talking about the family and that we can't even check IDs, and to me that just imploded the whole thing. If we don't even have the ability to really question who somebody is or verify who they are, then I don't know how we move forward with this.
So we're looking at expanded use of the E-Pass to make it more convenient. It's all a matter of it takes about half the time to get somebody through on E-Pass as it does by looking up their name in the system. So if we can move people through the gate in half the amount of time, we basically added another lane just by enhancing the software. With E-Pass, the ID is checked for everybody coming in. So it's not like they get the E-Pass and they get to drive in. They still have to show their driver's license. So we are identifying the person coming in. So we're going to come back with some more research on that and give that option, that information to the members.
Can I just make a couple comments, please? I really appreciate giving staff more time to research this. I would like to have due consideration given to our members and the fact that the vast majority of people bring guests and family members into the community and they treat our community properly and safely, and that we ought to consider their needs to be able to do that as simply and as quickly as possible.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of tabling, say aye.
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 5 in favor, motion carried.
All right, we're moving to member comments on personal issues. Bob, you've got a couple of them up here, so if you want to talk about removal of geese from the common area, is there a topic? We have change in the monthly meeting, but I think we addressed that, so come on up and
So it's Bob Whiteside, 3716346. So I propose that we remove all the geese from POA common areas. Reason is, there's reasons. I'll give you the three main reasons. There are other ones. First one, of course, is the goose feces that accumulates each and every day, and sometimes it's quite a bit on all the concrete walkways around this area, down by the docks. I looked up things on the internet, a few different places, Fish and Game, wildlife preserves, and universities, and I was surprised by this. It says that the kind of geese we have, they'll distribute 1 to 2 pounds of feces a day if they defecate. I've seen it. I didn't know it was that much, but Steve probably knows, because I know that operations has to clean it. I think they do a pressure wash. I'm not sure. At least I think it's twice a week, maybe more. So it's a big problem, I believe. And then the other thing is with that, it's like minefields when you try to get through. I do it on daytimes with my granddaughter, and I set her on my lap and I tell her to watch out for me. So she's left, right, there's the poop and so on. But it's something that's a problem. And in the grass areas, I don't even know how you see it most of the time. So you throw a blanket down there, and I know you've got to be laying on it at some point. And it actually has at least 3 serious pathogens that's usually in it. So there's probably times when people, I can't say, somebody's going to say, well, I don't see anybody getting sick from it. Well, some of these would just give you something like salmonella, or another one, I can't even pronounce the name very clearly. You could go home and say, oh, I got the stomach flu, or I got, I'm puking, or whatever my kid is. Not to say that it's caused by this, but to just write it off that it's something else. It could have been this. They put their hands on it. Some little kid can even, pick one up and eat it, perhaps. They give an instance of that. So it has bacteria that it carries. And some of the stuff that we've even mentioned around on our beaches, on the shorelines, I'm not saying it comes from the geese, but it's the same pathogens. And then we have they're mean. They're downright mean. So they'll come at you, even if you don't bother. If you get in their area, particularly if there's a nest around, the gander is the one that protects the egg clutches or the little ducklings, and they'll come up and nip at you. I know they don't bite and draw blood on me. I've never had it happen that bad, but they will do that. There could be a time when a small child about the height of one of this goose's head, would say, could peck at their face. That would be a danger. But it all goes back, I guess, to if you look out there a lot of times, there's many people that, you go around and there's big piles of duck poop, or goose poop, I'm sorry, can't blame it on the ducks. And it's unsightly. It happens around a lot of other places. They've had troubles in other communities, parks, cities. And
Thank you. Your concerns noted. I think the geese have been here a long time, and at times they're disruptive, and at times they make a mess. And I think, if the staff wants to look, if the staff can look into it, possibly we could look into a solution. But
because the way I can only see, and then some of these other studies say it too, is it's something that people enjoy. They enjoy the geese around. They're watching them and so on. But the price to pay to watch that is, I feel it's not comparable.
Okay, I think the time's coming to an end. Thank you for your comments. There are issues with the geese. They're both a beauty and a pain. So,
beauty of the goose.
John, you want to come up?
John Stelzner, 3778 Lot 009. I had a comment I was going to make when you were talking about the board starting time, but I came up here to help Bob. Because you can't hear anything, and as long as I'm speaking about that, there's a big problem here without that wall in place. The echo in here is terrible, and just regularly, just talking here, people need to speak close to the microphone to be able to, that it goes out. But there's some problem with that wall open like this, and I don't know what it is. The city POA meeting was it was really bad. I sat in the back row, and there was a fan blowing that was just terrible back there, and you could not hear anything. So every member that spoke, you couldn't understand it. When you put that wall up, it encloses it more and it stops this echo. But anyway, that really isn't what I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to have a couple comments, and I know you made a decision on the board meeting, but I've been going to board meetings since probably for a long time. And just one thing about putting the ACC first, we did that for a long time, and the problem with that is that people come in and out, and it's a real distraction to have the ACC trying to carry on on that portion of the meeting. It is an open meeting, and members can stay for that if they'd like. It does get lengthy sometimes, and it does run late, but they move the meetings up, I think, just to be able to go home earlier. My opinion. That's only my opinion. If you have, the thing that's interesting is when we had the ACC first, people were coming in and interrupting, and people coming in and they were talking, not realizing the importance of the appeals. If you have there's no reason why people can't come in afterwards. You have somebody out in the lobby that's taking, checking memberships, and they are still probably sitting out there now. But there's no reason why members cannot come down here at 8 o'clock in the evening, or even 7 o'clock, in an hour or an hour and a half afterwards, because the meeting is actually still going on. So, and having the members speaking at the end of the meeting is a great idea, because that gives them an opportunity to come in. But you've already made a decision, I understand that, so thank you.
Thank you, John. Jeanette Williams.
Jeanette Williams, 3716-081. I've only been living there a year and a half and still don't know my number. I've lived on the East Bay for a little over a year, and I would like to tell you about my concerns about boats speeding on the East Bay and the wakes and the dangers. I've seen paddleboarders, boat paddlers. Boats are not slowing down. And I don't know if this has always been or if it's just because I'm there. But several times, especially this year, I have almost been not knocked off the dock, but fallen over. My dock is as close to my seawall as it can be, and boats come 5 to 6 feet close to it, and Dale doesn't live too far down the bay than I do, so you know how the bay goes this way, and then when you get to my dock, it turns this way. So that's why people are so close to my dock. The wake is rebounding off my seawall, and I think one of the reasons may be not just the speeding, but there's a solar bee before boats get to me, and it makes them, it's not straight down the bay, it turns and it leads them towards my dock. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is I've seen so many boats with wakes, and not just ski boats, they're fishing boats and pontoon boats. I also think that Marine Patrol needs to be more consistent. I've seen Marine Patrol out there tell somebody, actually last weekend, to slow down, and another Marine Patrol just followed the guy who was having a wake. So I'm just really concerned on how, do people really know what a no wake is? It's pretty obvious to me. My speedometer doesn't work on my old pontoon boat, but I still check and make sure I don't have a wake. So that's just my concern, and I hope something can be done. If we can have cameras, I mean, I've got cameras. You could put a camera on my dock to prove that these boats are doing this.
Thank you, Jet. This is a concern of the board, and we are looking into this, so. I have Art Femeister. Harmony, we have any more slips?
No, I don't have any on.
Saw slips coming your way. I was just making sure.
We had a member question that I believe we're going to have her follow up with staff afterward.
Okay, Art Femister, 3719-315. First, I want to thank all the POA staff for the great job you did on the 4th of July, especially operations. I heard it was a real mess out there, and the ops, as always, worked really hard for that. Chris, just real fast, Sun City, the Palm Desert community in Del Webb in Palm Desert, an hour from here, exact same populations, been using license plate recognition for years. It works well. I'd be more than happy to put you in touch with the folks out there. I've got some good friends, so if you want to talk to them. So the reason I'm here tonight is I sent out the email a couple of Fridays ago about the speeding boat in the East Bay. Shortly after that, the Marine Patrol miraculously got great. That following Sunday, which was 2 Sundays ago, they were all over the place. I'm saying, man, if they can keep this up, we're good to go. We're all done. You'll never have to hear from Art again. It tapered off a bit. I expected it would, and kind of feathered out a bit. 4th of July was better. The following Friday, not so good. The weekend was okay, but it's doing better. They're on the right side. I talked to the Marine Patrol captain. He understands the importance. But what I want to put forward here is just something real fast for you, just some food for thought, because one of the board members asked, come with solutions, not with problems on that. So my ETTT program is basically education. I do direct mail pieces myself for my company, so I use the same format I did. So what you see here is an approved post office thing. You just put on the front, attention boat owners on that, and on the back, yesterday on Sunday, I took the pictures myself. You can use them. This was put together in a half hour. This is not professionally done. I saw the boat coming down, saw the wakeboarder heading towards them. The paddleboarder. I said, she's going to go off, and sure enough, she fell right in the water, almost banged her head. So perhaps sending out a direct mail piece like this to the boat owners, letting them know that, hey, this is the problem, you need to slow down, maybe follow up another one on that. It's one way reaching them. The the other way on that too, obviously, is the direct newsletter. We talk about no wake enhancing devices, but we never talk about the 5-mile-an-hour zone. The boat safety test just says it's a 5-mile-an-hour zone, doesn't really talk about it. I'm convinced more than half of the boat owners that exceed the wake don't really understand what they're doing on that, so education is helpful. Same thing, first T, Marine Patrol. I'm also, just like Jeanette said, I watch them every single day. Probably about 3/4 of them watch boats go by and they wave to them, throwing a larger wake than they should, and they don't do anything. I don't think they understand, because the person that trained them didn't understand. We have two really good guys. I'm not going to say who's who and who's not here in public, but you got two really good guys that follow through. Technology, Eric's not here tonight, so I don't want to speak for him, but I already know that he's working on cameras and what have you. That will be a big help. I would just say that Mike Harris said when he left the last board, he put money in this budget for the cameras, so every beach on the East Bay will have a camera facing out that streams back. So if I call and say at 1:45, this boat, this general color and description came by super fast, they can go back and look at that and be able to hopefully tag them on that. And the last part is transparency. This is the monthly report from the Marine Patrol. Not once in the 5 years I've been here have they ever listed any violations they give out. They talk about quagga mussel inspections, boat tows. That's all great stuff. They've never listed. So are they not giving out citations? Have they never given one in 5 years, or do they? We have no way of knowing. The only way to build trust is to know what they're doing. It's not that we're checking on them, but the Community Patrol lists all their stats. So when they're issuing those violations, and the other thing that'd be nice to see is how much time do they spend in the East Bay? When they go through the tunnel, they write down start time, they leave end time, they put it on an Excel spreadsheet, hit the I'm blanking on the word for it, the thing that automatically tallies it, that my wife can do for you guys if you like on that, and you can have a report ready to go. This is how much time was spent in there, and it should be an equal amount. I'm very happy with the new Marine Patrol captain. He's on track. He understands the issue. He's trying, so I think we're on a good start. I'm happy to see that. But I think there's a few more we can do. But I think education for the boat owners, because I know they're not all bad people. The guy that knocked that lady off the paddleboard wasn't like, oh boy, I'm going to get her, I'm going to nail it now. He just didn't care. He just didn't even think about it. So that's my plan of action for the board member that asked me to bring forward a plan of action, and I could go on, but I don't have any more time.
Thank you. Yeah, our time's coming.
Yes, I'll tell you.
in.
All right, so thank you for your time. We appreciate it, and happy summer, everybody.
No more member comments. We'll move on to report of executive session.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
1 second, Jack.
Today I tested the distance with reference to the transponder, and it's still, I got to within 1.5 feet before the gate went up. And we talked about that in our special meeting, that transponders should be picking that up a minimum of, I would say, 10 feet. But when you're driving, 10 feet's not very much. But if you expect to gain anything by passing out transponders information and put them on windshields, you're not going to gain anything, because the transponder you have just doesn't work right. Well, it works the way it does, but it's either too cheap or it doesn't pick it up quick enough. And that thing should be picking that car up long before you get to that gate. That's the reason you've got gate. I don't know how many times they've hit that gate, and I can understand that. So we need to work on that transponder and get it to work properly.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. Lynn?
Okay, good evening, everybody. Today's executive session was called to order at 11 a.m. Items discussed on the agenda included 2 member-related items. There was 5 personnel matters discussed, several third-party contract discussion and agreement items, and there was an update provided from legal. The meeting adjourned at 4:57 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to association reports. Bill, Jordan, come on up.
Good evening, board members and community. This month, I would just like to actually comment on our recent 4th of July celebration, just a few things. This year, we had a successful 4th of July celebration in many ways. Just a little tidbit, the community accommodated approximately 20,000 extra guests on that one day. Community Patrol and the POA have worked together diligently to try to address the issues that we've had in the past, such as overcrowding, slow entries at the gate, and things of that nature. I'll just highlight a few of the effects that the efforts that we've gone through have had. As far as Community Patrol is concerned, we had over 20 plus extra guards on that day, just that day alone. We had electric signs, new electric signs at the gates to help direct guests into the proper lanes. And one major change was resident entry via the exit lane at the north gate, which we all thought was pretty successful. The results were less issues at the parks and beaches, faster than ever entry times at the gates. But and those are, some of the highlights. But in my opinion, actually, most of the credit for the success of the day goes to the residents of Canyon Lake, in my opinion. Both the residents and the guests were courteous to my staff and myself. They abided by most of the rules of the community. So therefore, I really just wanted to give thanks to the community for helping us to help you have a successful and fun day. And I would also like to just invite the public to give us an email. That would probably be the best way to do it, to either security or the board or member services if you have any suggestions on things that we can do to improve. Hopefully we'll be able to keep that trend going. Thank you.
Bill, could you just comment, please, on the report? Thank you very much, and congratulations. I agree completely with everything you said about the 4th of July. You guys did a great job.
He's getting the report. He'll be right back.
Just wondered if you could comment on the philosophy you have about noise and animal-related citations. We got lots of calls and few citations. I assume animal-related means barking dogs, at least I hope it does. So could you comment on the philosophy there, please?
Sure. Animal-related means barking, but it also means animals in parks that shouldn't be there, animals off leash, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And loose animals running the streets.
Okay.
And now, what was the other portion of the
The question
question?
is, for so many calls, it seems to be only a few citations.
Just take a look before I comment. What page is that on? Thank you. Okay. Yeah, regarding those, we don't write a lot of cites because a lot of times we don't witness. What we have to do is we have to actually witness the violation. So as an example, if you call and say there's an animal in the park, by the time we get there, a lot of times the animal is gone. So what this represents is how many calls we actually received from residents versus the number of citations that we've actually written. So usually the reason we won't write a citation is because of the fact that we can't witness the offense.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Corporate Counsel?
Nothing new to report today.
Okay, next item is staff reports as written. If you look around page 337, at least that's our page number, they give a pretty good report on what's going on in the community. Just if you have a chance, go ahead and take a look at that. We're not going to discuss it because it would be 20 minutes, and it's fairly well written. Okay, let's move on to board comments. Jeannie, you want to start with board comments?
Sure, I just hope everybody enjoyed their 4th like I did, and it's nice to see everybody out there. Thank you, or out here today. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that say that the residents and guests around here are basically behaving themselves. I think that's wonderful. One of the things that I talked a lot about during the election was the need to figure out how to bring more continuity to our governance. And it seemed to me that we needed longer terms, or maybe we needed more people on the board. The idea being that if we could get to where a particular group in the community couldn't band together and put key individuals on a board and literally change the direction of the community for a year or two, it'd be a good idea to try to avoid that, to try to get a more cross-section of opinion from the community. And in that regard, in thinking about it, it strikes me that extended terms, four-year terms, having election cycles maybe every couple of years instead of every year, and eliminating the ability to do, we call it community, it's combining votes, cumulative voting, would be huge steps forward. And what I'd like to do tonight is to ask the staff to prepare discussion items for the board to talk about at their August meeting that hopefully, in my mind, would turn into ballot items for a special election. In my mind, that special election would be, those ballot items would be presented in those discussion items would be presented in August. It would give us an opportunity to communicate with the community for the next couple of months on how to get that set up so that it was most advantageous. Hopefully have an approval of those ballot items in special election at our September meeting. And then once that approval occurs, then hold an election so that we have results by mid-November. It works on the calendar. I think it's a good idea personally, and I think that we ought to start down that road. So that's my request to the staff, to develop the discussion items necessary so that at this meeting in August, we can talk about a special election, talk about extending terms, and talk about cumulative voting.
Tom, we'll go down to you now.
Let's see, on June 29th, I think it was, the community had a concert out here on the amphitheater. From everything I saw from the post, seemed like the community had a great time. No incidents, no issues. And then 5 days later, we have a 4th of July, and unfortunately, we have a lot of negativity that goes with that particular event. And it's unfortunate that we have to endure things like fights and arrests and, drunken people and trash, et cetera. And I don't know how we can get there, but it seems like we should be doing whatever we're doing on the nights that we have things like this concert, which was new, to keep that feeling of not only community, but also that we have a pleasant experience, and then the end of the night, we're happy we did it. I was out of town this year for the 4th of July, so I didn't get to experience it, but just from what I saw on Facebook, I was kind of saying to myself, I'm glad I wasn't there. I know it's an enjoyable experience for a lot of people, and we spent a lot of money with the fireworks show, and that's all great. I think, unfortunately, there's just people that will do what they want to do, and maybe it's guests don't feel the same kind of commitment to this community as the members do. And how do we control that? I think we have to probably put some responsibility on the members and their guests, and when things go south like that, make it so that they might think twice about bringing in some of the guests that come into these events. Talking about things like the speeding on the East Bay and speeding on the roads is really the same scenario. Without the consequence and the presence of some sort of an enforcement there, people are probably going to take advantage. And so we, as an association, may need to be looking into upping our staffing and making sure we have more boats, more marine patrol, more road patrol, maybe more radars on the main streets that are permanently fixed rather than moving around, but just the things that create that level of a member thinking, maybe I ought to think twice about doing this rather than what we seem to have experienced in the recent past years. I think, we have a great community here, and we're just, I think, a little bit getting overwhelmed by some of the things that are happening in this association. So our job is to step up and try and make it so that we can make this place better and all the members enjoying their time here, and I hope to be a part of that. Thanks.
Hey, Jim.
I just want to thank the operations department in our community. it's kind of interesting when you see a 4th of July weekend come about and all of a sudden you see lights on street corners that are going to be driven by a gas engine or something to create the light. And you see signs going up the day before so that you don't park here. And all these things just kind of miraculously happen every year about this time. And I just think that that's a group of people, they just don't get the credit that they deserve. It's just something we take for granted. And Steve, working with your department has been a pleasure, and I know you guys worked very, very hard. And security this year, I think you said we had 20 police officers. I mean, I'm sure so much of the things that have happened in the community is over time where we've maybe had some shortcomings. But when you look out after 4th of July fireworks and you start driving, you see the lines of traffic. Fortunately for me, I'm going the other direction, but it's amazing that we do as well as we do. And you just have to thank our community patrol and our operations and everybody else involved in this great event that we have here in Canyon Lake.
Yeah, on the 4th of July, we're somewhat of a victim of our own success. We have this great fireworks show, we have this great community, we have these great parks, and you know what? People like to go to those places, especially on the 4th of July, and we do get a lot of guests. I mean, my rule of thumb on guests on those holidays is I don't invite anybody in the community that I wouldn't invite into my own house. And that's kind of my standard. So I kind of, if the community as a whole would embrace that standard and not call in 20 people that they don't really know and send them down to the beach, that's a little unfair maybe to your neighbors. As far as your guests and family that are at your house and want to go down and see the fireworks, that's a great number of people to have. Considering the number of people, I think security and the sheriff did a great job. We had a lot of drinking by the kids, but I think the way the staff held the standard that day was pretty incredible. The way they got them in the gates was pretty incredible. I just want to say thank you, did a great job. As far as the so many or too many people, I know that's not on you. That's maybe something the board needs to look at. So there we are. Chris is talking about term limits. My day's kind of coming to an end. I don't have a whole lot of time left on the board, but I will tell you that the constant changing of the board is not very effective. You come on in and we were elected, this new group was elected in May. Here we are in August, kind of still going through some of the orientation stuff. And then we're going to have the September, October, November, December. And then we're going to start the election season. And so, there's this forever changing direction of the community. And we have a set of undeveloped projects, plans, that never go anywhere because the new board shifts directions. And sometimes to develop a long-term direction for a community, you need some level of stability. Ted's out there. He's been a long-term planner for a long time. He's been on the board. And he can tell you with the constant changing of the board's direction, it's just important that we have some consistency. This isn't your little typical POA with a pool and some landscaping. This is a major enterprise, and to have a big cruise ship, it's like a big cruise ship. When you turn the wheel, it takes a while to turn, but when you got a big cruise ship and you're trying to treat it like a little speedboat, trying to weave in and out, it's not very effective. We need to put together strategies for a long-term plan. We need to develop relationships and trust with the community. We need to have the community involved, and I don't believe that's going to happen unless we kind of get the terms extended. My biggest downfall is, will anybody really want to commit for 4 years? Will that ever really happen? But barring that, we really need longer terms. Jack's out there. He can tell you when it was 1-year terms, and talk about not being able to get a direction set. It was a spinning top with 1 year on. You barely got on and you were back out for election. But in those days, we had probably 1,000 houses and 3,500 vacant lots, and then probably a third of the people living here, and it was probably a simpler time. But it's not simple anymore, and we need to set some direction and kind of stick to it. So that's my board comments. So we're going to make a motion to adjourn. We have some ACC stuff coming after, so we're going to take a couple of minute break. For most of you, the ACC is just individuals coming up in front of the public to plead their case. So for the rest of you, feel free to stay or feel free to excuse yourself. And do I have a motion?
I believe we're recessing, President Walty. So we'll
motion to recess for 10 minutes.
We don't need a motion if that's okay.
We'll just recess. Thank you.
Okay.
It doesn't appear as if we have anybody here. We know how to clear a room. Okay, so what I would like to do is, there is, the first one up is Eric Carter, and he was supposed to be here, but obviously is not. There are two of them are both the same issues. There's improvements that have been placed in the setback. Lynn, if we can just go to, I'm going to say, let's stick with Eric Carter. And if you look at the first 2 pages of my report, I've changed the way the format is to hopefully become a little easier to read and to follow for the board. And it doesn't, like, there's not a whole lot of information. So the first part's going to let you know, is it a CC&R violation? And yes, tonight's our CC&R violation. Then the very first thing that you're going to see is my staff recommendation, which kind of like tells you a small snippet of the story and then what my recommendation is. And then after that, we have exhibits for review, which are right in order. That kind of helps us to be able to move along with the story. So if we can go to Exhibit A, which is the original pool plan, I just want to kind of give an idea of what we're talking about on both issues. This is the original pool plan for Eric Carter, which was approved a few years ago, and it's finished. But when the inspector went out to sign it off, unfortunately, there were some other items that were built without a permit. So the second picture, actually, let's go to the third picture, which is going to be Exhibit C. Lynn? Just go ahead and bypass the second one. Right there, if we can we flip it? So, oops, so what's happened here, yeah, we flipped it and went too far. Okay, so what's happened here is that this fireplace and the barbecue island is right on the property line. The fireplace itself does set back in, but it's still considered the setback. So when we talk about the setback is from the property line to 5 feet in. And so our CC&Rs basically state that nothing can be built in that setback. This particular one here, I was just explaining just a few moments ago, give it a for instance, if it's your neighbor, and he's now going to be barbecuing, he's barbecuing on that property line, it impedes upon some of the privacy that you all would like to have within your community. Someone will be standing there flipping some burgers, and if you don't have a good 6-foot fence, or if that person's 7 feet tall, they can look into your backyard while they're flipping burgers. So a part of the actual CC&Rs for the setback is not just for safety, although that is a huge one. If you are at the house side and then you have that 5 feet, that should be kept clear at all times. This is in the back portion of his property, but that setback rule doesn't, it goes all the way to the very end. And so we have two issues. We have it now where they have something that's, somebody's going to be flipping burgers and being able to look over into somebody's yard and taking away from some of the privacy. Now, unfortunately, as it always is, this did not get an application, and then once the application was submitted, because it is a CC&R violation, the committee is not able to approve it. The committee wanted to recommend to do a recorded variance for this because obviously some money has been put into this. The unfortunate thing is a recorded variance is not for this situation. Yes, it's simple, and the board has the right to do that, but it would be my recommendation to send it back to the committee and have the member do what's called a regular variance, where we would notify within 300 feet all of his neighbors to let them know that there is this CC&R violation. Then if anybody complain or have any issues with it, then they can come to the committee meeting and say those issues. Then at that point, if everything is all good and all said with, then the board can actually put it in their approval, which would be my recommendation, is to approve it should nobody come in against it, I should say. And the reason why we don't want to do the recorded variance is because this person is not new. This particular person has been in the community since 2017 and should have a good working knowledge of their rules.
If I can add on to what Jill's saying, Lynn, can you go back to the picture again and flip it? Now, the committee actually, when we have problems like this, we actually go out and view them. And in this case, we were there. I guess my light is not working there. Okay, just above the barbecue, if you look at that brown thing that goes across, that's the neighbor's pool. So what she's talking about, smoke from the barbecue, it's just going to waffle right over that small fence. And one other important thing about this is this is a wood-burning fireplace. And look at the short chimney on that. It should have been taller to try and get the smoke away, but any smoke from a wood-burning fireplace, if the wind is blowing from the west, which it normally does. It is a wood-burning, yes. That was in the other.
It would be for the barbecue itself.
Yeah, it's a propane barbecue, but the fireplace is a wood-burning fireplace. Okay, so basically, my opinion, and of course we don't get into safety or any of that, but normally we see higher chimneys on these things, and that is just too short. But it does, and we need to look at the other members, the people who live next door. So that's just two more. It's just a big problem. But the reason why the committee is, I believe we recommended this, simply because the cost of removing this, the member won't do that. He'll, will probably, if the board said, no, you can't do that, and ask him to remove it, would he remove it? That's a big problem. So that's why the committee recommended that it be approved.
Well, that's something I'm not sure if we should be able to speak in open session, but I can assure you that it's gotten here because of
But I mean, there's consequences. No matter what, there are consequences that are being taken.
Yeah, but for some people, the small fees, the fines are nothing.
I realize you
Yeah.
can't talk about it.
Yeah.
Was it submitted to does this have to be submitted to the city since it is a wood-burning?
It should definitely have been submitted to the city, and if memory serves me right, we did send this off. We share information back and forth with the city, just so that, especially when we have situations like this, we don't share everything, obviously, because some things the city doesn't care about, but then it's in their hands of whether or not this would be a city problem. I was just looking at, the one thing I was looking at was actually, why do we have that setback? And is it something that we should look at for the future? And really, I believe that we should maintain with that setback. And the biggest is not just because of the safety, but also so it doesn't impede on somebody else's privacy.
So I found it, my page, 365. It's one that's the POA form, number 4. Says fireplace, propane burning.
Okay.
But that's not what it is.
That's not what it is. It
This
actually,
appears to be filled out by him and signed by him.
yes. We do know for sure that it's propane for the barbecue.
I don't have that with me on my paperwork, but I believe that also was not built according to what his actual plan was for that. Wasn't it with a 5-foot setback? Because it doesn't have that on.
So Lynn, go, I think it's the next one, no, back down. Keep going. Now, if you can flip that back, you see that's where the actual barbecue slash, where'd it go? You can just leave it, that's fine. Okay, so if you can see, this is the resubmittal application, or the plan, I should say, and it shows you what the distance is for the actual barbecue island and the fireplace. It's still within the setback, and it is one piece, it's not two separate units.
It's built into the concrete. It's not one of those shipped to the site things. I mean, it is literally, we call it stick built in the framing.
It's
but
stick built.
It's built, there's no
It's stick-built to match his pool and his house and everything. There's nothing to say that how pretty it is. It's very nice. It's a nice-looking unit. It's just not done properly.
So I'm missing what he's asked, what he's basing his appeal on.
He wants to keep it.
Well, but did he write to us or anything? Did he file a request for appeal, or he just said?
On your pages in my,
I'm sorry, I may have just missed it.
let me find it for you. It is going to be on the second page of my actual report, all the way down to the very end where it says members appeal.
What page are you on there?
Hold
just
on.
to make it easy for me.
Wait a second. Let me make sure. Yes, members appeal dated May 17th, 2019. That's what his statement was. You can also see it on his actual appeal form, which is further back.
Page 363.
363?
Is that the form?
All right, so this, I don't like building in setbacks. I think this is something that we seem to want to put up with if it's already there. Now we've got somebody who's built something, and we don't want to fuss with him because it's expensive to tear it down, but he's just violated all our rules. And so how can we even come close to honoring this appeal and not ask him to make this thing comply? I don't care how much it cost. Honestly, I don't. So I think you're even being lenient when you say to work with him to come up with the proper variance. Is that the wording that you use?
Well, we have the two different variances. We have the recorded variance, which is not really what it's called. That's the one we use to place things on the consent agenda to no fault of the brand-new member. They bought the property, that was there, they loved it, but now what are we going to do? We're going to make them tear it down. So what we do is we do a recorded variance for the life of the improvement. So should anything happen, let's say down the line when they have to come in to redo something on there, we basically can say, nope, it's for the life of the improvement. Whereas this is a member who's been in the community for a while, and I agree with you 100%, but I also look at all aspects of how we can kind of try to come to the middle ground. And the only middle ground that I can come to without saying remove this is to do the regular variance, which then notifies his neighbors that he's got something that's against the CC&Rs, which gives them an opportunity. That's just a suggestion from the staff. The board can choose to either A, approve it as is with a recorded variance because it's within your rights, or send it back to the committee and do the regular variance, or tell them to tear it down. That would be the board's.
So a regular variance, does that mean if his neighbors don't care? That
It could very well mean that.
But then the next set of neighbors that come along that may care, we really haven't protected them at all.
That's why we typically record the variance, so that it's knowledge to subsequent purchasers. But
Just for clarity, though, does that mean that people next door, do they know that? Will they know that from their title report? That somebody has a variance next door with a...
Probably not,
Okay.
but
Well, typically what will happen is with a variance that we notify the public, it's going to be 3 houses on both sides, maybe a few houses in front. Because this one's on the lake side, we're not going to notice anybody across the lake. So it would probably be between 5 and 8 properties that we would notify.
But typically, variances are granted due to a hardship, but not a hardship that's created by the homeowner, a hardship that's related to either the location of the property, the size of the property, the topography of the property. There's something unique about the property that prevents the homeowner from constructing something that someone else with a similar lots in the community can build, but they can't because their property has a unique feature. I don't see that to be the situation here. It's just that it's been constructed in the setback, but you typically should find some hardship that's unique to this property that allows for the variance.
Which is the reason why I'm asking for him to do the variance, because there might be a hardship that I'm not aware of. But if he can't prove it, that there's a hardship, then it would actually be up to the board to say if he can approve there's a hardship, then it can be approved. If not, then he would have to tear it down.
Do we have any ability to limit the use and say you can't burn wood, the only thing you can burn is propane? This is the condition. I'm not saying that's my answer. I'm just saying, do we have the ability to simply say, all right, you put this thing here, but you can't put wood in it, because obviously it's going to be smoky everywhere. You can put a propane burner, but that's your only option. Again, I don't necessarily think it's a great idea, but I just want to know if that's a possibility.
That would actually have to be up to the committee. I'm sure it can be converted. I'm not really an expert on that. But to state something like only not to burn wood in it, we couldn't monitor that. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking.
That's the problem, is can we put some restrictions that keep the smoke, so the smoke's going in the neighbor's yard, they're yelling, well, we can't do anything about it because we approve the variance. There's a fair risk here to inhibiting the use of the neighbor's property in this.
Right, and I don't see any way that we can actually monitor that, nor do I think that there's a way that we can actually impose a fine should it happen, because we don't have a specific rule.
If we're not going to enforce our CC&Rs on new construction, regardless of whether they get a permit or not, then we should not have these requirements. It bothers me enough that we do it with existing construction when there's a change of ownership. So I suggest no, we send this back and say, work out a deal with the committee to bring this thing into compliance.
If I might say, this is foreign to me because I've never had a board that has ever gone towards this general direction. It would actually give the committee and the board a little bit more feet, or how do you want to put it, a little bit more, oomph to us to be able to make sure that we're getting things done properly. But I would agree with that. So it would be up to the board in the decision.
I do just want to point out for the board's understanding, the provision in the CC&Rs regarding variances clearly states that you can grant variances, but that if it's done, it has to be in conformance with the intent and purposes of the governing documents, and provided also that in every instance, each variance or adjustment will not be material, detrimental, or injurious to other property or improvements in the neighborhood. So if there is a concern with the smoke and that's detrimental, that should definitely be taken into consideration as to how you proceed with this.
I wanted to ask one thing. My opinion of the Davis-Sterling Act is that the committee can only approve the committee can only approve topography. That's a limit of an ACC. So this still would have to come back to the board if you did a regular variance. Isn't that correct, Teresa?
Yeah, it should come back to the board because it's different than what's in your CC&Rs.
Correct. Okay.
So I move that we deny the appeal, and we request the owner to go back to the ACC and seek justification for a variance, and if that's not possible, to work out an arrangement with the ACC for how this improvement can be brought into compliance.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Any more comments?
I have one, actually. It's my understanding, from what I've heard, that as part of this, something will be sent out to the neighbors, and you said the neighbors will have to come into the appeals committee to make their statements?
It would be their privilege. They can come in, and we offer it to them to come.
So maybe they wouldn't want to attend, though, and we would miss those issues. Couldn't they submit it electronically or via letter or some other
definitely.
kind of... Okay.
Yes, either or. We do that either way. We open it up for them to either comment, call. They have to have something in writing and or come in.
Okay, I just want to make sure that if we proceed with this, and he or whoever is supposed to do it, notify the surrounding, that we've given every opportunity for them to submit their comments. Okay, and is it anonymous, or do they have to?
If they choose to have it anonymous, that's up to them. For the most part, if they're going to be, stating something, it's going to be one of the neighbors that we've sent it to. We know that. So yes, they could. I mean, I don't see any reason why they would not be able to do anonymous.
Well, I'm just thinking and I don't know this gentleman, but, if he goes out to his neighbors and tries to influence their decision or something like that, they might not want him to know who said what or something. So that would be my only concern about that.
Are you Mr. Brubaker?
No, Mr. Carter.
Oh, you're Carter. Sorry, didn't recognize you. So I'm pretty much done with this portion of it.
We have a motion and a second. Any more comments?
This is Mr. Carter right here.
Was Eric Carter?
Yes, this is Mr. Carter right now.
We've had some comments here. Is there anything you'd like to say?
The fireplace is 100% propane burning. It's not wood. So I don't know where that came from.
Could you please sit down and turn the mic on so I can hear you? Thank you, sir.
So the fireplace, it is 100% propane. There's no wood. It's all sticks.
Excuse me, sir, the microphone, hit the button.
There's a button there in the... Hold it? Yes. No, let go. No. More time? There we go. Okay. So yeah, the fireplace, 100% propane. I was told that I'd have to have some sort of structure that actually encases my pool equipment, as you can see in the drawing. Covers everything. I was told I had to have something there. It's 4 feet 6 inches from the property line. It's right there. So that's there. There's no 5-foot easement on the side of the house. The patio on that side comes around the side of the house, goes right into the upper level. You can't get up, you can't get down. It's in a little hole down there. It's right there. There is the barbecue island, but that's the only thing in the easement. It's in a hole. There's nothing back there. You can't go anywhere. Yes, 100%. As the time I bought the house, yes. And I don't know, I'm still trying to figure the architectural and the building department and how it all works here. It's actually really confusing. It's hard to work with. And so I'm doing what I can, but it's still hard to understand. I go into the architectural committee, I talk to him over and over and over, and I'm doing everything I can to comply.
So we understand that you built this and it's finished, and you built it without approval or permit. Is that correct?
That is incorrect.
Okay.
I built it with approval for the pool plan, and they said I would have to have some sort of structure above it. So yes, I did build the structure, and I put the fireplace above it. This is correct. I did. So just the fireplace, but I was told I had to have a structure above my pool equipment, which is clearly shown on the pool plan.
What about the construction and the setback, the sink and the whatever that thing is?
There's no setback because it's an elevation change. It's a hole in the lower part of the property. There's nothing. You can't get in and out. I have pictures on my phone.
No, I have to get a clarification, Cheryl.
I actually have you guys coming over on Thursday for a site visit, and can we walk it then? You can actually see.
No, I don't want to walk it. I got pictures. I got that. I'm just trying to understand so we can give you a proper determination.
Okay.
Does the setback rule not count in an elevation change?
No, it counts. And I'm not sure, he did not get an approval from the committee. He might have gotten approval from the city, but not from the committee.
See, the problem is we've got CC&Rs, you know this. We've got rules.
Yes, I'm learning that.
We've got a process. I built a house. I went through 2 years of all the stuff that you're going through just recently. And so I get it. But the fact of the matter is, it's our job to uphold our CC&Rs.
I understand. I've been here about a year and a half. It hasn't been multiple years, about a year and a half, and I'm trying to figure out due process. So since I own the house. So you can see right there, it shows all the pool equipment, and I was told I had to have some sort of structure over that. And
So my motion is to deny your appeal and ask you to go back to the ACC.
That's fine.
There they are. No question who they are. Go back to the ACC and seek a proper variance, and if you can't justify a proper variance, then get them to agree with you about what you have to do to bring this into compliance.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
But the fireplace, it is not wood burning, and, I started hearing that. I was following
See,
it.
I'm trying to stay away from all those details. I'm just trying to get back to what's key to us.
Okay. So I don't know if the 5-foot setback applies if there's a level change and
It does.
it's
They just said it did.
inaccessible. And there's no fencing on the lake right there, so there's nothing. It's all open.
See, as
Everything.
much as we'd all like to get to decide these things for ourselves, you gotta get the committee to do it with you.
That's all I'm asking for.
And well, they're there.
Okay.
And to come to us as a board and ask us to overrule our committee is a big deal.
I'm not asking for you to overrule anything. It's just
Okay.
it's not understood what it is.
Just to restate that we have a motion on the table, and the motion is to send you back to the ACC committee. There's a variance you can appeal, you can request.
Okay.
Cheryl, that's correct, right? So the motion was to go back to the ACC, get what we call a regular variance, is that what we call it? To apply for a regular variance. At that time, you can...
That's what we're going to call it today.
We're going to call it a regular variance, and you can put the regular variance, get the package together, and you can bring it back to the ACC.
Okay.
And
That's the motion.
that's a variance that we get a recommendation from the ACC to approve.
Okay.
And and the other part of my motion is that if that's not possible, then you work out a deal with ACC about how you have to modify that structure so that it complies.
Okay. And what's the timeline on that variance? Getting it figured out. I honestly just want to comply and be done.
Good.
I kind of feel like stuff happened and it needs to be done. I've been trying. I just feel like I'm getting beat up everywhere for all kinds of stuff.
One of the things is that this is your actual approved pool plan, and
That's correct.
that does not have the barbecue or the fireplace on it.
Okay.
Okay. So the thing is that this is a CCNR violation. The ACC doesn't have the authority or does not approve variances that are not topography. And there is no topography problem there. So it will eventually, you'll work with the Planning Compliance Department to do a variance, but it will, and the committee will review it. The problem is that my understanding by what we are allowed to do, we could not approve this. It will have to come back to the board.
But John, what I'm asking is that
But-
if it comes back to the board, I understand what you're saying, I'm sorry, I just want to make it simple for him, because I hear him saying, I want to get this taken care of. Please don't bring us a variance request if you guys don't recommend that we accept it. And if you're saying you can't ever do that, then that's fine, maybe, but I think you need to go back and have a look at that. Is that fair?
Yes, I agree with that.
So I believe we have first and second on the table. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 5 in favor, motion carried.
Eric, please contact Rose tomorrow, and then you can set up a time where she can help you to run through the variance process.
Okay, I will. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, now Mr. Brubaker contacted our corporate offices, as I want to say, probably about 4 days or 5 days ago. He was unable to make it today, and he would like to be able to reschedule it. That really is going to be up to the board whether they would allow that or not.
You said when we got started that this was a similar situation.
It very much is a similar situation.
So you recommend that he submit also for a regular variance, which is the neighbor notification, et cetera?
That is correct. It's just giving them an opportunity to try to prove that they have a special circumstances without us being the people to say they don't.
And again, I missed the reason he gave, why he thought it was okay to bring this to us and we should approve his appeal? Is that written here somewhere?
Okay, so I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
What's his basis for asking us to uphold his appeal?
The basis is because he's built it and he would like to keep it.
Same reason.
Same.
And this is new construction.
Correct.
Brand new, yes, and it's in the front yard, but it's still in the setback. It's in their courtyard.
Yeah, it's not in the front yard, it's a courtyard, but it's up against the property line, and it was built without a permit. We had asked the member if he was going to use propane and electric, and there's a couple other things that are on the application that, yeah.
For clarification, it is on page 402 of your book.
So if he had been here this evening, the appeal would have been only for the fireplace in the setback, the 5-foot setback. So it could have been built in the courtyard, but instead he built it up against the property line. And he didn't contact us, or we would have notified him that it needed to be 5 feet from the property line.
Just to start off, he's asking for us to table this until he can talk to us. Is that one of the things? What's your thoughts on that, to table it and wait till he has a chance to come back and talk to us?
I think it's always best to have the member here to be able to state their case in person to the board. So I would think it would be fine
To
for the
table
board. Yes, to table it until we can get him scheduled.
And technically, to add to that, I believe they're allowed one postponement. After that, it would be heard regardless if they were here or not.
Based on our prior policy, I think it'd be unfair not to grant him what we've granted so often, in the sense of a second opportunity to come forward. In that sense, I would like to make a motion that we table this and allow him to come back in and reschedule. That's both reasonable and it's both are basically our process. So that's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comment?
It does say in Lynn's memo dated June 24th that the one postponement, but it cannot exceed 60 days from the written notice of request. So he has 2 months to bring this back.
And it's kind of a long, I think we're into the 31-day period, so 60 days would actually be the next meeting, if my math is anywhere near correct. So he'll have a chance to come, and if he doesn't make the next meeting, then his opportunity for the postponement's kind of gone. So a motion stands to table this. I think we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5 in favor, motion carried.
Okay, if I can find my agenda, which is way back in the beginning, I think that's the last thing on the agenda. So can I get another motion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.